So our friend Jack Sparrow has a magic compass. The issue is, it's useless to him. You're probably thinking, well, how could it be useless to him? Well, you got to remember what, as he described his compass, it does not point north. It points to your heart's desire. Here's the problem. Jack doesn't have a clue what he wants. Jack's life is so messed up and so confused and so this way and that way that every time he holds the compass, his heart moves from one side to the other and the compass just keeps moving, and so it's useless to him. If you're familiar with the Pirates of the Caribbean movie series now, because there have been 5 of them, our friend Jack Sparrow spends the better part of those 5 movies putting the compass in the hands of somebody else, then trying to convince that person that they want what he thinks he wants so that they can use the compass to go find the thing that he thinks he wants, only to figure out when he gets there that's not really what he wanted, and so it doesn't satisfy him. And so the movie series just keeps on going. Man, I'd like to have that compass, wouldn't you? I'd love to be able to put something in my hand to tell me to go exactly where I want. Lose my keys? Compass can find them. Lose my kid? Compass can find them. Wouldn't it be great to have something like that? Of course, for it to work, it has to be the thing that I want most. Now, I realized afterwards why I never do things the way that I've got this stage set up, because I kind of cut off these people over here. But don't worry, I'm going to make sure you can see them, because on the table here I have 5 items that all have something in common. The first item that we have here is the scale. And so this scale has a use in our life. The second item that I have on the table this morning is a ruler. Again, something that you probably have 3 or 4 of them at your house. Not uncommon items. The next item that I have is a thermometer. Okay, this one goes on the outside. This is not one you stick in your mouth. I don't recommend you try it. It's a little big for that. But it's one that it's there. I also have a clock. This is a special clock because it was given to us by a friend, and this is one of those things, remember clock, and it has their wedding anniversary date on it and all that kind of stuff. And so I have a clock. And then I have one more item that's sitting on the table, and it is not a pocket watch. It is indeed compass. And each of these items does something unique and different, but each of them all measure something. If I'm going to use the scale, I'm going to measure how much. If I'm going to use the ruler, I'm going to measure how far. If I'm going to use the thermometer, I'm going to measure how comfortable, hot or cold. Okay? If I'm going to use the clock, I'm going to measure how long. But if I'm going to use the compass, it's not a how question. The compass can only tell you which way. And when you think about the objects on the table and you think about that video clip, you already know exactly where I'm headed. We're going to talk about the compass for just a minute here. Now, a compass is an interesting thing because it only works on 2 conditions. Well, okay, 3 conditions. You must be on planet Earth because it's designed to work with the poles, and so if you go to another planet, it's not going to work this way. All right? So the first thing is a compass only works if you look at it. It doesn't talk to you. Okay? You actually have to look at it and look at where it's pointing. Here's the other amazing thing. A compass only works if you know which direction you're supposed to be going. See, a compass always points north. Thus, if I want to use a compass to get to California, if I don't know California is to my west, then the compass really does me no good, does it? If I think California is to the east, I could use this compass all day long, and I'm never going to get to California unless I swim across the ocean and go all around the world, I guess. I could do it that way. So to use a compass, I got to have some understanding of my own desires. Matthew chapter 9, verses 35 through 38. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." So we're discussing this sermon series called Living in My Father's Shadow. And by the way, if you're looking at this table and say, those objects look awfully familiar, you should be given a gold star, because guess what? This is the second time these objects have made an appearance on this stage. These were the objects used in the very first sermon series I ever preached on this stage. As a matter of fact, I wasn't the minister. I was just coming here week by week preaching. It was the first one. I didn't know whether y'all had video capabilities or what, so they said, "Will you come do a sermon?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I just did an object lesson because it was kind of easy and convenient. And I've been asked several times if I would re-preach that sermon. This is not a re-preach of that sermon, but these objects are important, and they're a good reminder for us that our vision hasn't changed. Even from the moment I first stepped in this building, these objects are still all about what ministry is. See, we're looking at the shadow ministry of Jesus, not the shadow ministry as in, it's just a hearsay or thing that's gone by. We're figuring out how to live in our Father's shadow, and we're going to do that by living in the Father's Son's shadow. Thus, since he's living in his Father's shadow, I live in his shadow. Thus, I am now living in his shadow. And just so you know, this series isn't laying out specifics. We've already discussed that we're supposed to teach, and I'm not going to tell you how you're supposed to teach God's Word. There are a lot of different ways to do it. We know that we're supposed to go out and spread the good news, the gospel, and I'm not going to tell you how to do that. There's a lot of ways to do that. We've already looked at the idea that we're supposed to meet the needs of others and minister to people, and I'm not going to tell you how to minister to people, because guess what? It sort of depends on who you're going to minister to. So I'm not going to give you the specifics behind any of this, because we're just examining the shadow. Remember, a shadow is just an outline of the actual thing that's creating the shadow. It doesn't give you the details. You don't get facial expressions, or it's just the outline. It's not none of the details. This is just kind of a broad stroke of what did Jesus' ministry shadow look like. The other thing I want to remind you is it's not going to be the same. I can't do this the way Jesus did it. I would love to. I would love to be able to walk on water and heal people and work miracles. I would love to have that, although it would probably become a drag at times because everybody would be coming to you. But you know what? I'd love that, but we're not going to be able to do it the way Jesus did it. We're not going to be able to do it the way the early church did it. Our culture's different. I mean, the way, if you look at some of the things the early church did, that people would look at us like we've lost our minds if we thought about it. They'd call us a cult. They say we're trying to create a commune, is what they would actually accuse us of doing. So this isn't going to ever look like the first century church. It's not even going to look like it did 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 50 years ago in the church. You see, the thing is that although we're looking at the shadow, methods have changed over the years, but message does not change. We're using the analogy of walking in somebody else's shadow, and when I talk about walking in somebody else's shadow, I don't get to tell them what kind of shadow to cast, do I? No, they cast the shadow that's them, and it's up to me to figure out how to fit my methods into their message. So the message does not change. We're still going to preach the same message that we've always preached before. We're still going to talk about the idea that Jesus came and gave his life on the cross, the fact that he is here to seek and save the lost. All of those things that are the core part of our church, those things don't change. But as we follow the shadow of Christ, other things might change. But another thing that will not change is our motivation for doing this. The reason we say that we're coming and following Christ is because, well, we want to do what Jesus did. And we understand that the human condition is fatal. And that, well, Jesus was sent to seek and save the lost. He was there to reestablish that relationship. And so that means if I am going to follow Jesus' shadow, then that becomes my motivation. I can't be motivated because I want to be a good person. I can't be motivated because it's what somebody else wants me to do. My motivation has to stay the same as Jesus. Otherwise, the shadow concept goes away. Remember the game I played with Benji that I told you guys about where I was walking in his shadow? How did the game end? The second you saw Benji's shadow, game over. He had to learn how to walk the way that I was going to stay in my shadow. I didn't adapt to him. He adapted to me. And that's the image that I want to give us. Now, with that being said, what did Jesus do? Well, we've already talked about this. We spent the first week of the sermon talking about this, and it's very simple. I'm not going to belabor the points, but you need to remember, Jesus went, Jesus taught, Jesus preached, Jesus ministered. That was the entirety of Jesus' ministry. Everything Jesus did fit into one of these four categories. Either he was going, teaching, preaching, or meeting somebody's need, which is what a ministry is. It's just meeting the physical needs of somebody. That is what Jesus did his entire 3 years of ministry. He never changed it once. So that begs the question. Are these the things that we're doing? If we're going to follow in Jesus' shadow, then these are the things that we should be busy doing. Going, teaching, preaching, ministering. Now, when we begin to do that, there are some other things that need to go with it, because we need to look at what did Jesus see. And we talked about this the week before Inside Out, and when Jesus looked out there, what Jesus saw was harassed and hopeless people. Jesus looked at the world full of sin, the world taking selfies of himself. He looked at them and he did not see judgment. He saw victims. He saw people that needed help. And that brought us to the next point that we were looking at. What did Jesus want to provide? Jesus didn't want to provide a set of rules and regulations for them to live by so they could be good little people. What he wanted to provide them was shepherding, a guide, a leader, somebody that has already walked through all of the places that they're going to go, already struggled, already seen, knows the way through the path. And he says, hey, look, I know where all the landmines are. I know the route. I know which way I'm going. I understand. So all you have to do is follow me. And you'll get through. So that leads us to one question. What did Jesus say? I mean, it's one thing to know what he did. It's another thing to know what he saw. It's another thing to say what he wanted to provide. But I actually want to crawl into the mind of Jesus and help us understand why did Jesus do this? I mean, what I want to know is which way. And it's in that little part of the verse that I skipped a couple of weeks ago when I read out and I told you that he wanted to be a shepherd to those without, he wanted to be a shepherd to the sheep without a shepherd. I skipped over those little words and told you we would come back to them, and I hinted to this last week, this word of compassion. And yes, you can notice the first letters in compassion spell what word? Compass. It's this idea of compassion, and the compassion is defined as sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings and misfortunes of others. And this is important for us to remember. When we look at the world, we don't see judgment, we don't see sin, we have compassion, which starts with the idea of sympathy, which isn't just feeling, it's also showing or expressing sorrow for someone else's misfortune. It would not be a part of the sermon if we didn't have one fire truck drive by. Even when we looked at Inside Out, we had a fire truck come through the park. It's amazing. You just bring the firemen here. So we have this idea of expressing sorrow or showing sorrow or getting involved in somebody else's sorrow. It has the idea of pity. Again, the idea of sorrow is what I want you to see caused by the suffering and misfortune of others. So this is not encouraging self-pity. Jesus did not have a woe is me ministry. Jesus did not look at the fact that he was going to have to give his life on the cross and say, you've got to be kidding me. No. He was too busy looking at the problems of others to worry about his own faith. And then, of course, the word concern, which is trouble or unrest, typically about an imminent event or something with uncertain outcome. So let me go ahead and bring this down. There is no uncertain outcome. We know the outcome. We know how the story ends. We know what's going to happen. We know how life goes. So this is an imminent event, something that we know is going to happen. It's unchangeable. If somebody doesn't do something to help, we know what's going to happen to people. And when we begin to look at people with those kind of eyes. Those eyes are compassion. You know what? Things begin to change on the inside. Because when I have a compassionate heart for somebody, then you know what? It makes me want to figure out ways that I can help them, not judge them. It makes me want to figure out ways that I can improve their life. Not just tell them, well, this is how you got here. See, when I begin to have compassion, it kind of takes me out of the equation. It changes all of my focus. So, to help the disciples understand this idea of compassion, Jesus used object lessons. That's why I like Jesus, because he's kind of a simple person when it comes to teaching. Very deep teaching, but always gave something that you can latch on to and you can understand. And to make sure the disciples got it, he did this twice on 2 different occasions. So if you have your copy of God's Word, or you don't have one, you can pull one out of the pew rack, and you can make your way to Matthew chapter 14, verses 13 through 21, and you're probably going to recognize these verses because, hey, this is something we talk about a whole bunch. Everybody does sermons on this particular passage. We like these sermons usually. And the first object lesson, this is how the story goes. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by a boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from towns. When Jesus landed and saw the crowds, he had compassion on them. There's our word. And he healed their sick. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, this is a remote place. Jesus, we've gone too far. And it's already getting late. Jesus, we've been here too long. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages to themselves and buy some food. Jesus replied, they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. We have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. How much? They answered. Bring them here to me, he said. And he directed the people to sit down. How comfortable. On the grass, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and gave thanks and broke the loaves. And then he gave them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the people. And they all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 baskets of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. So Jesus gives the disciples this object lesson. And obviously, the disciples had something in common with us, and the fact that you never get it the first time you hear it. So if you turn your page, just one page in the Bible, and you go from chapter 14 to chapter 15 in Matthew, guess what? He does it again. And this is the way this story goes. Great crowds came to him, bringing the lame and the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others, and they laid them at his feet, and he healed them. The people were amazed when they saw the mute speaking, the crippled made well, and the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they praised God of Israel. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days. Can you imagine that? 3-day church service. Oh my gosh, 3 days they were here and have nothing to eat. Now, he doesn't give them an option this time. He says, I do not want to send them away hungry, or they may collapse on the way. His disciples answered, where could we get enough bread in this remote place, here we go, same story, to feed such a crowd? How many loaves do you have? Jesus asked. 7, they replied, and a few small fish. He told the crowd, sit down on the ground. Then he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and when he had given thanks, he broke them and gave them to his disciples. And they turned to the people, and they all ate and were satisfied. Afterwards, the disciples picked up 7 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was 4,000 men, besides women and children. So if you can do simple math, we're talking a minimum of 9,000 people. How would you like to have to serve that fellowship somewhere? 9, even in 2 settings. That's a lot of people. And Jesus is using this mass amount of people because he wants the disciples to understand this idea of compassion. So, what's the important lesson that he's trying to show them? Well, maybe the lesson should be bring more food. Maybe we should answer the question with the scale. We should just say, you know what? If you would just learn when Jesus pulls you to the side, or when Jesus says we're going to go on this, somebody remember, pack more food. That wasn't what he was trying to teach them. Maybe the lesson they should have learned from this is stay closer to town. Maybe the lesson should be how far. You know, if they had just not gone to such a remote place, if they had kind of stayed right there in the town, if they had hung out near the local establishments, then when it came time to eat, they wouldn't have had all of this problem. They could have sent them down to the local McDonald's or the Tasty Freeze or the Burger King or the Chick-fil-A, provided it wasn't Sunday, and they could have gone over there and everybody could have eaten and everybody could have been happy if they had just not went this far. Maybe it was man, they had just limited the crowd a little bit. What if it's been 5,000 we had just distributed tickets and only the first 100 got to come? We can handle 100, right? I mean, that's not that big of a deal. We can figure out 100, but I mean, they just left it open and people just kept coming and coming and coming. And so maybe the lesson is that they need to learn what they're capable of doing. Keep it comfortable. Keep it small. Maybe the next time they need to learn a lesson, stop before dinner. Hey, Jesus, maybe when you're teaching and preaching and healing, you need to start looking out there and you need to get yourself a clock. You know, and you need to take the clock and you need to set it up there, and as you're getting close to dinner time, you need to calculate, it'll take everybody about an hour to walk back to town, so you need to stop the time so that, you know, our ministry can survive, because you know what, it can just base it on the clock. See, they're trying to solve ministry problems, but they're using the wrong measure. Because Jesus didn't care about the scale. Jesus didn't care about the clock. Jesus didn't care about the thermometer. Jesus didn't care about the rule. The ruler, what did Jesus care about? The compass. He cared about which way he was going to do his ministry. You see, there was a lesson that God will provide, and that's not even the lesson. Did God provide? Yeah. But leftovers. They gave God what they had, and Jesus turned it in from seven little loaves of bread and 7 baskets of food. That's awesome. But the blessing box up with that for a few months probably. But again, before you can teach them, have compassion. And again, note the first letter of compassion. It's going before time. Know your direction. Know which way you're going. Get your focus set. Don't use Jack's magic compass that simply takes you to your heart's desire. Use the one that points due north, and then set your course based on where you know you're supposed to be going. That's how you follow in somebody's shadow. Now, there are a few lessons that I want to really pull forward from this, because I think they're important. First of all, you need to understand this was not part of the plan. There should be a T at the end of that note. The first story, it starts off saying that the plan was the disciples were tired, the disciples were exhausted, and the plan was they were going to go to a private, remote place, and it was just going to be Jesus and the disciples. Start with a campfire, they got some graham crackers, some marshmallows, chocolate, and some s'mores, sit around the campfire and sing songs. This was supposed to be a very private moment for the disciples. It didn't happen. Those pesky, harassed, and helpless people showed up, and they brought all their needs with them. And it ruined everything. I mean, we had a plan. We were going to say we were going to have a retreat, and I was going to get all filled up, and I was going to get all excited, and they just showed up. We didn't even invite them. They followed us. I mean, how do you get away from these people? We're here to speak. So we just allow these helpless and harassed people to show up. And here's the important thing. This was going to cut in on Jesus' time. They were going to miss the Jesus time. I mean, that sermon that Jesus probably had planned to preach them, and they were going to learn something new and exciting about Jesus, that wasn't going to happen because all these people were here, and we're going to have to do the math. 12 disciples, 5,000 people. And they're going to serve them. Oh my gosh, you You don't have time for a lesson. You don't have time for a worship song. You don't have time for anything. What are you going to be doing? You're going to be serving, and when you're done, you're going to be probably washing dishes if they use plate. And you got all this stuff to do, and then you got to collect the leftovers. This was going to be hard work, and so they were going to miss all of their Jesus time. Or were they? Maybe the idea of Jesus time wasn't the fact that they got to their time. They got the ultimate opposite. Giving them a totally disruptive life. Nothing was going to happen the way that it was supposed to happen. The schedule was going to go longer because they had already been there for 3 days. How long do you think it takes to feed 4,000 people? I bet you they were there for a little bit longer. And these were 4,000 hungry people, so they probably weren't the nicest people in the universe. And they were sitting out in the hot sun for 3 days, so they probably weren't the best smelling people in the universe. And they were going to have to serve 4,000 of these people. This was going to tell me that's not my plan. Jesus, what are you doing to me? And go on top of that, you need to remember it's okay to have a plan, but sometimes / often ministry has to react to the moment. When God puts one of those harassed and helpless sheep in your path, it's time for you to turn on the idea of compassion, to pull out your compass and say, okay, God, you've given me a direction. Now I know which way I need to go. And you take the plan that you've put on for yourself and say, you know what? Obviously, God had a different plan for me. Obviously, there was something else I was supposed to take care of. Obviously, God, here is the harassed and helpless sheep. You want me to do the ministry to them, and in that process, guess what? You'll be ministered to by the Holy Spirit. Now, in case you think that, well, we had some fresh legs disciples out there, here's the other thing that you need to realize. By the time they got out to those 5,000 people, they were already exhausted. This is Mark's beginning of the telling of the same feeding of the 5,000. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. So before they ever got to that private place, they had been out there in the world teaching and healing and doing all these things, and they were tired. Then because so many people were coming and going, they did not even have a chance to eat. Wow, so I've been doing all this ministry and I've gotten so busy I didn't even have time to get my own. My plate is empty. And it says, Jesus tells them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. Doesn't that sound like a good offer? I mean, I've been out there ministering and I'm tired and I'm exhausted and I'm just stretched thin. And you think, well, Jesus said, hey, let's just get away from the people and let's just go have some private time. I bet you disciples jumped. And keep in mind, the disciples were caught by surprise, but Jesus was not. I think this was part of the lesson. Just when the point they thought they had reached as far as they could go, Jesus is like, you don't even begin to understand the concept of compassion yet. But I'm about to teach it to you. I'm going to give you 5,000 examples, and I'm going to give you another 4,000 examples of what it means to have compassion. So here's the question. What does compassion actually do? Well, here's the thing. It's not complicated. Matter of fact, you've already seen this. First thing is compassion sees them. Isn't that where it started? It said that Jesus saw the crowd. He saw them. It's not like they snuck up on him and said, surprise. He saw them coming. And he looked out there and he saw them. And he didn't hold up a stop sign, and he didn't yell in a big voice, go away, this is private. He didn't put up a no trespassing sign. He saw them coming, and he said, I have compassion. Yeah, I know you're tired. Yeah, I know you really haven't had a lot to eat. Yeah, I know you've been busy. Yeah, I know, but I have compassion. He then embraced their physical needs. He started to heal them. And then it says he taught them. Mark chapter 6, verse 34 says, so he began teaching them many things. So he began the teaching process. And then when he was all done, Luke tells us in Luke 9:11, it says he welcomed them. Not only did he not send them away, he said, come on, you got any more friends to bring with you? I'm sure the disciples were like, shut up, Jesus. We got enough here. And he says he welcomed them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God. This is what compassion allowed them to do. So here's the question. Are you following? Are you living in the shadow? How are we measuring our ministry?